Hey, David Bristol here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Yngwie Malmsteen. And I had a really good response from the Breaking Chords episode that I recently did. And I thought that would be a good idea to kind of follow that with a look at his chords and progressions and some of the secrets hiding in Yngwie's rhythm work and chord work. One thing that's important to remember with any classically influenced musician, not just Yngwie, I mean it could be anyone, but those that are influenced by classical music, they're influenced by habits and traditions and compositional habits, that were formed, centuries ago. So it's interesting to really dive in and start looking at things that, musicians played in the 1600s or 1700s or 1800s. And, you really tap into some of those, progressions and sounds and habits and little, ideas and cadences and melodic motifs and all these different things that popped up. And to find that, kind of filtered around, and then you hear electric guitarists playing it with distortion, either on a Strat or a Gibson or, it could be any guitar really. But it's interesting, to really notice guitarists, tapping into that. And then, Yngwie's been doing it for decades. And it's really inspiring, to kind of learn what's going on behind the scenes and how he's able to play harmonic minor and diminished and Phrygian and all these exotic sounds. And a lot of it is because of the chords. Or the opening, that was I'll See the Light Tonight from Marching Out. And I know the first time I ever heard that song, the riff just grabbed me. And I thought, what in the world is that? Grab my guitar and, try to figure it out. And it's an interesting, busy riff. It's definitely hinting at classical, music, but then it's also hinting at just, kind of traditional 80s hard rock and metal too. So it reminds me, of both worlds, this kind of Baroque classical period of classical music, and then this kind of, Sunset Strip 80s kind of sound too. But it starts off, and he's really just running through a scale run, kind of backwards along the A and the D string, and then it moves into A. So it's basically just notes from A Aeolian, like this. And then you're going to jump all the way up here and grab, it's basically an A6. I guess you could also think of it as flirting with augmented, because it's an A power chord, but we're grabbing that F right there. And then it's going to go back to just an A power chord. Right there the last time, he's basically playing F diminished, but instead of playing, kind of almost like a diminished arpeggio, like this, think of, Randy Rhoads or people like that. Instead of doing that, Yngwie is actually grabbing, the lowest notes on the low E and the A, and then the higher notes on the E and the A. So he's sidestepping through that arpeggio, which is really cool. It's a different kind of twisted way of playing with diminished arpeggios. And he kind of just ends that phrase with an A. But it really, classic riff, and it just grabs your attention. Next example is from the song Fire, which is from Trilogy, and that's one of my favorite, Malmsteen albums. And this, once again, the riff at the opening of the song just grabs your attention. And he's using some really common, inversions and like partial chords. And he's using, what I've nicknamed that 70s chord. And he's also dipping his bar into some of these chords. So when you hear that riff, it really does grab your attention. It's just like, what is that? And you hear it dipping and kind of smeared around. So my bar is actually, it's kind of a stop tail piece, or like set up like a hardtail where my tremolo doesn't move. So if you have a bar at home, listen to the song and experiment with kind of dipping into some of these chords. I'm going to slide into them and also use vibrato to kind of mimic it. But it looks like this. And it's really interesting because there's a, an A over C sharp down to an E, and then it's an F over A to a C over G. And that's where he kind of dips his bar. And then he does it again right here between this G over B to a D over A. And then he goes back to that A over C sharp to the E. So he's really just kind of sidestepping through this. But he does it in a very dramatic way. The next example is from Queen in Love, which is also from Trilogy. I'm going to get stuck in Trilogy mode here for a second. But Queen in Love is also a really, kind of standard sounding, rock, guitar riff. But the way Yngwie put it together, and then also just the way he plays and, kind of puts his ideas together, it has a very special, kind of sound and flavor. Something like this. And there you can see we're just bouncing off that low E string in a heavy way. And then there's a big E power chord over here, and then a partial C, and then a partial D. And then it's kind of like an A5 over E. And just that A note, or that E note and that A note there on the 7th fret on the A and the D string. But we're still hitting that low E string, so it's kind of, A over E. And then that, the second time through, and there he's kind of sliding into like a D11, technically. And then back down to that C. And then he kind of just grabs that G there on the low E string to start the whole riff over again. And it's interesting because that riff implies Aeolian. He's not implying harmonic minor, so that's kind of a rare natural minor moment. The next example is from the song Dark Ages, which is another song from Trilogy. So I do apologize that I'm just stuck on that album. That is my favorite Yngwie, album. And I like a lot of his other albums too. But there's so many cool ideas on Trilogy. His tone was just exceptional. I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure it was the duct plugged into, an old Marshall and whatever pedal board and whatever, extra effects and rig he had. But the tone on Trilogy is just killer. I don't know what he was using specifically. It sounds like the tubes were just on fire, when he was playing. But Dark Ages is interesting, and I've kind of mentioned this already, how he implied Aeolian and implied, harmonic minor just in the riffs or the chords. And this is a great example of implying harmonic minor. And there's actually two guitar parts, and he's playing in harmony. But the first guitar part, I guess I'll call it guitar 1, is doing this. And that's basically E harmonic minor. So that's guitar 1, and then guitar 2 basically harmonizes with that. And I've got the Ditto looper set up so I can kind of imitate this with just one guitarist, like this. Now right there, he's basically creating chords with a harmony or harmonized guitar part. Because, guitar 1 was doing this. And then guitar 2 is doing... put both those parts together, you're creating these little dyads or partial chords. Something like that, which, think of old school Metallica, Battery and, some of those songs. And you can definitely, Orion and some of those early Metallica songs, and you can hear Metallica playing, with ideas like that. And here's Yngwie kind of harmonizing his way through it, which is really cool. Next example's from Magic Mirror, which is also from Trilogy. I did warn you I was going to get hung up in Trilogy. But, Magic Mirror is awesome. I love this riff, and it's implying D harmonic minor, and he's cleverly doing that with the progression, and then also with the single note riff that opens it. And we're also in drop D tuning too, by the way, just a heads up. So we're down a half step and drop D. So right there, we're starting, and we're targeting that C sharp right there, which is definitely signaling, D harmonic minor. And then we're going right into a D minor, like a little piece of a chord there, like a partial chord. And that's basically, a little piece of D minor, a little piece of E minor, and then a little piece of C sharp minor. And once again, it's flirting with that harmonic minor tonality. And you could also play that like this. There's a couple different ways, you could fret that, but cool riff and a really cool song. But the next example is from the song Dreaming Tell Me, which is from the Odyssey album. And I really do think Odyssey is probably Yngwie's best album, or strongest album. I mean, Joe Lynn Turner on vocals, the production was really high. He still had Jens Johansson in the band. I mean, that album is killer. But I'm still, I think, partial to Trilogy. I don't know what it is. Like, Trilogy, there's this burning fire, like in Yngwie. And I don't know, I kind of like that darker, kind of negative, sound or whatever, where it sounds like he's pissed. And then Odyssey, it's brighter, there's like a smoother production. The music's great. I mean, it's probably, Yngwie's finest hour, in my opinion. I mean, he has a lot of great, material. But that one's kind of hard to top, especially, Joe Lynn Turner. That's, I think, the best vocalist that Yngwie's worked with. But anyway, this is a beautiful song, and I really like the guitar part too. And there's a lot of chords happening here. Something like this. Really cool. There's a lot of chords. And it's probably a good idea to use your pinky right there, just because the notes are kind of moving as the chords change, and you kind of need that note for every chord, in the part. So it's a good idea to maybe use your pinky there. That way you can kind of maneuver around and grab the other notes for those chords. Over to it's like an A major and an A sus4, and then here he he's technically going into a little piece of D minor, which it's actually flirting with harmonic minor once he continues going. But there was the A, and then he's really just walking down this piece, and starting on that B flat, A, G, F to E. And then he starts doing this little pedal point thing, which is implying D harmonic minor. And there he's kind of flirting with that C sharp and the D, and then there's a bass note that's moving, you know, from D to E to F to G. You know, really interesting. To a G minor, and then G minor 7, or G minor over F technically, and then an E minor 7 flat 5, and then it's just the A sus4 to the A, or I'm sorry, A sus4 to A major. So it's something like this. Starts all over again. But that's a beautiful song, and I love the guitar part too. The last idea comes from Little Savage, which is on Rising Force, and I definitely love this song. I've always liked the riff, and it's just this busy little instrumental, kind of jam. But it's basically flirting with F sharp Phrygian is what's happening here. And in F sharp Phrygian, have a G natural, and in the riff you can see right there we're kind of flirting with this F sharp 5 power chord, and then right there he reaches up and grabs that G natural, so there's the hint at Phrygian. And it's definitely a really good riff to practice, for picking as a warm-up or an exercise. It's busy and it's challenging, and it just keeps moving, which is cool. It also moves from F sharp to G over to B, so there's like a little progression happening within that riff. But that's a great riff to practice, just for some picking and fingering ability and strength, and just kind of building up some more dexterity and ability on the fretboard. That's going to wrap this look at the chords of Yngwie Malmsteen, and I've definitely had a lot of requests and questions regarding his music and how he puts everything together, and how do you imply harmonic minor, or these different modes. And it really does have to do with the chords and the progression. If it's a harmonic minor, you're going to be targeting that raised 7th, and then that's going to bring out the sound and kind of a flag, I guess, like, hey, harmonic minor right there, because you're raising the 7th. But anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.